16-year-old Daniel Martinez hadn't eaten a proper meal in 3 days. The bus station on 7th Street had become his refuge, a plastic bench his bed, and the fluorescent lights overhead his only source of warmth during the cold Denver nights. His jacket was threadbare, barely protecting him from the biting November wind that swept through the city. His sneakers had holes in them, his jeans were stained and torn, and his hair was matted from weeks without a proper shower. He was invisible to the thousands of people who passed through that station every day, just another forgotten kid that society had learned to ignore, to avoid, to pretend wasn't really there. But on a gray Tuesday morning in downtown Denver, Colorado, Daniel would do something that nobody expected. Something that would trigger a series of events so remarkable, so life-changing, that it would transform not just his own existence, but the lives of countless others in ways that seemed almost impossible to imagine. Because sometimes the people who have absolutely nothing are the ones who give absolutely everything. Before we get into Daniel's amazing story, we'd love to know where you're watching this from right now. Drop your city or state in the comments below. And if you believe in the power of human kindness, smash that like button. This story is just beginning, and trust me, you absolutely won't want to miss what happens next. Daniel had been living on the streets since he was 15. His father had died in a construction accident when Daniel was 13, leaving him and his mother struggling to survive. His mother, Maria, had worked 2 jobs trying to keep their small apartment, but the medical bills from her own chronic illness had piled up faster than she could pay them. Eventually, they lost everything: the apartment, their possessions, their stability. They'd moved into a shelter, but the conditions were terrible. Overcrowded, dangerous, with people fighting over beds and stealing whatever they could. Maria had tried so hard to protect Daniel, to keep him safe, but her health kept deteriorating. When Daniel was 15, his mother collapsed at her job at a grocery store. The paramedics rushed her to the hospital, and Daniel spent 3 days in the waiting room, terrified and alone. On the 3rd day, a doctor came out and told him his mother had passed away. A heart attack, brought on by years of stress, poor nutrition, and untreated health conditions. Daniel was completely alone. He had no other family, no one to turn to. Social services tried to place him, but the system was overwhelmed. The temporary foster home they found was 40 miles away, in a neighborhood Daniel didn't know, with people who made it clear he was just another burden. After 2 months of feeling like an unwelcome stranger, Daniel made a decision. He packed the few things he owned into a backpack and left in the middle of the night. He returned to Denver, to the streets he knew, to the bus station that felt more familiar than that foster home ever had. Life on the streets was brutal, but it was honest. Nobody pretended to care when they didn't. Nobody made promises they had no intention of keeping. Daniel learned the hard way how to survive. He learned which convenience stores threw out food that was still edible, which shelters were safe to sleep in, and which ones to avoid, where the public restrooms were that he could use to wash up, how to stay warm when the temperature dropped below freezing, and how to make himself invisible when the police did their sweeps. He'd found a spot inside the 7th Street bus station where security rarely bothered him. It wasn't warm, and it certainly wasn't comfortable, but it was better than sleeping outside, where anything could happen. Daniel survived by panhandling, though he hated doing it. He'd stand outside the station with a cardboard sign, keeping his eyes down, feeling the weight of people's judgment with every person who walked past without acknowledging his existence. On good days, he made enough for a meal from the dollar menu. On bad days, he went hungry, his stomach cramping with emptiness. It wasn't a life anyone would choose, but it was survival, and Daniel had become an expert at surviving. On this particular Tuesday morning, Daniel had woken up on his bench at 5 a.m., his body stiff and aching from the cold. He'd gone to the bus station bathroom to wash his face and hands, staring at his reflection in the grimy mirror. He barely recognized himself anymore. His face was gaunt, with dark circles under his eyes, his cheeks hollow from malnutrition. He looked older than 16, worn down by circumstances no kid should have to face. Daniel left the station and started walking through downtown Denver, heading nowhere in particular, just trying to stay warm, trying to figure out how he'd get through another day. The morning was overcast and cold, with that particular Denver chill that cut right through your clothes. Most people were rushing to work, their heads down, clutching coffee cups, lost in their own worlds. Daniel was just another shadow on the sidewalk, another piece of urban landscape that people had trained themselves not to see. That's when he noticed the old man. He was standing at the corner of 17th Street and Broadway, one of the busiest intersections in downtown Denver during morning rush hour. The man looked to be in his 70s, with silver-white hair and a weathered face that spoke of a hard life. He was sitting in a wheelchair, an old manual one that had seen better days. But what caught Daniel's attention was the struggle. The man was trying to navigate the wheelchair forward, but something was wrong. One of the wheels seemed to be stuck or broken, and every time he tried to push forward, the chair would veer sharply to the left. The man's face was twisted in frustration, his hands gripping the wheels, trying to force the chair to move in the direction he wanted. The crosswalk signal was green, and people were streaming across the intersection, flowing around the man and his wheelchair like water around a rock, not stopping, not helping, just moving forward with their own agendas. Daniel watched as the man made another attempt to cross, pushing hard on the wheels. The chair lurched forward about 2 feet before veering left again, heading directly toward the busy traffic lane instead of across the crosswalk. Cars were stopped at the light, but Daniel knew that the light would change any second. If this man ended up in the traffic lane when that happened, a driver not paying attention could easily hit him. Daniel didn't hesitate. He jogged across the sidewalk, dodging through the crowd of pedestrians. "Sir," he called out. But the old man didn't seem to hear him over the noise of traffic and the crowd. Daniel reached the wheelchair just as the man made another frustrated push forward. "Sir, wait," Daniel said, a little louder this time. The old man's head snapped up, and Daniel saw his eyes, pale blue and sharp despite his age. There was suspicion there, and Daniel understood it. An old man in a wheelchair had to be careful about who he trusted. "What do you want?" the old man asked, his voice rough and gravelly. "Your wheelchair, sir. Something's wrong with it. You're heading into traffic. Can I help you across?" The old man looked at Daniel, really looked at him, taking in his worn clothes, his thin frame, his young face. "I don't need help from some street kid," the old man said, but there was less hostility in his voice than his words suggested. "I can manage." "I know you can, sir," Daniel said respectfully, "but that wheel is broken. You're going to end up in the traffic lane if you keep going on your own. Please, just let me help you get across safely." The crosswalk signal changed to flashing red hand. They had maybe 15 seconds before traffic started moving again. The old man looked at the signal, then at his wheelchair, then back at Daniel. Daniel saw the exact moment the old man's pride gave way to practicality. "All right," the old man said gruffly, "but don't push too hard. This chair's got a mind of its own." "Yes, sir," Daniel said. He moved behind the wheelchair and gripped the handles. The chair was heavy, and the broken wheel made it want to pull left constantly, but Daniel compensated, steering firmly to the right to keep them moving straight. They crossed the intersection just as the light changed, cars beginning to move behind them. Daniel navigated them across all 4 lanes and up onto the opposite sidewalk, breathing a small sigh of relief once they were safely out of traffic. "Where are you headed, sir?" Daniel asked. "Bus stop," the old man said, pointing down the street. 3 blocks that way. I can make it now." Daniel looked at the broken wheelchair, at the way it pulled hard to the left, even when the old man was sitting still. "Sir, with respect, that wheel is really messed up. You're not going to make it 3 blocks on your own. Let me help you get there." The old man studied Daniel again, his sharp blue eyes assessing. "Why would you help me? What do you want?" "Nothing, sir," Daniel said honestly. "I just don't want you to get hurt." There was a long moment of silence. Then the old man's expression softened slightly. "What's your name, kid?" "Daniel. Daniel Martinez." "I'm Frank. Frank Sullivan. And if you're really willing to help an old man get to his bus stop, I'd appreciate it." Daniel pushed the wheelchair down the sidewalk, navigating around other pedestrians, adjusting constantly to keep the broken chair moving straight. Frank directed him with terse instructions, and Daniel followed them carefully. They didn't talk much, but Daniel could feel Frank watching him, evaluating him. After 3 blocks, They reached the bus stop. Daniel carefully positioned the wheelchair next to the bench, making sure the brake was engaged so the chair wouldn't roll. "There you go, sir," Daniel said. "Your bus should be here soon." Frank reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a worn leather wallet. He opened it and pulled out a $20 bill. "Here," Frank said, holding it out to Daniel. "For your help." Daniel's eyes widened. $20 was more money than he'd seen in weeks. His stomach was so empty it hurt, and that $20 could buy him actual meals, not just dollar menu items. But something in him recoiled at the idea of taking money from this old man who clearly didn't have much himself. "I can't take that, sir," Daniel said, shaking his head. "I just wanted to help." "Don't be stupid, kid," Frank said, but there was something in his tone that wasn't quite as gruff as before. "You helped me. Let me pay you for your time." "You don't need to pay me for doing the right thing," Daniel said. "Besides, sir, you need that money more than I do." Frank's eyes narrowed. "What makes you say that?" Daniel realized his mistake. He'd been trying not to reveal too much about himself, but his words had given him away. "I just meant, you're on a fixed income probably, and I'm young. I can find work." It was a lie, and they both knew it. Frank looked at Daniel for a long moment. At his threadbare clothes, his hollow cheeks, the weariness in his young eyes. "You're homeless, aren't you?" Frank said. It wasn't really a question. Daniel considered lying, but what was the point? "Yes, sir," he admitted quietly. "For about a year now." "Jesus," Frank muttered. "How old are you?" 16. Frank was quiet, processing this. Then he did something Daniel didn't expect. He took the $20 bill and held it out again. "Take it, please. Not as payment. As a gift from someone who knows what it's like to have nothing." Daniel hesitated, then slowly reached out and accepted the bill. His hand was shaking. "Thank you, sir. Thank you so much." "Where are your parents, Daniel?" Frank asked. "My mom died last year. My dad died when I was 13. I don't have anyone." Frank's expression shifted to something that might have been pain or empathy. "The system didn't help you?" "They tried. It didn't work out." Daniel didn't want to get into details, didn't want to relive those memories. "I'm okay on my own." "No kid should have to be okay on their own," Frank said, and there was anger in his voice. Not at Daniel, but at the circumstances, at the system that had failed. A bus was approaching, pulling up to the stop. Frank glanced at it, then back at Daniel. "Listen, kid, I want you to do something for me. I want you to take my number." Frank pulled out a small notebook from his pocket and a pen. He wrote down a phone number with a shaky hand. "If you ever need help, you call this number. You understand." Daniel took the paper, looking at the number. "I don't have a phone, sir." "Then find one to use. A pay phone, borrow someone's, whatever. But if you're in trouble, if you need help, you call me. Promise me." There was an intensity in Frank's eyes that made Daniel nod. "I promise, sir." The bus pulled to a complete stop, and the driver got out to help Frank board using the wheelchair lift. Frank gave Daniel one last look as the lift raised him up. "Take care of yourself, Daniel," Frank called out. "And use that money to eat something. You're too damn skinny." Daniel watched the bus pull away, then looked down at the $20 bill in his hand and the phone number on the piece of paper. He carefully folded both and put them in his pocket, next to his heart. For the first time in months, Daniel felt something other than despair. He felt seen, acknowledged, like maybe he mattered after all. What would you do if you met someone like Daniel? Would you stop to help, or would you walk past? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We love hearing from you. Daniel used $10 of Frank's money to buy real food, a burger, fries, and a large soda from a fast food place. He sat in a corner booth and ate slowly, savoring every bite, making it last. The other $10 he saved, tucking it carefully into his sock where it couldn't easily be stolen. That night, lying on his bench at the bus station, Daniel thought about Frank. The old man's words echoed in his mind. No kid should have to be okay on their own. Daniel wondered about Frank's story, about why he was in a wheelchair, about whether he had family, about why he'd been so willing to help a homeless teenager. Daniel kept Frank's phone number in his pocket, checking on it periodically to make sure it was still there, like a talisman, like proof that someone out there gave a damn. 3 days passed. Daniel went about his usual survival routine, panhandling, finding food, staying warm, staying safe. He tried not to think too much about Frank, tried not to get attached to the memory of someone being kind to him, because attachment led to hope, and hope was dangerous when you lived on the streets. On Friday afternoon, Daniel was sitting outside the bus station with his cardboard sign when he heard motorcycles. Lots of motorcycles. The sound grew louder and louder until it was almost deafening. Then they appeared, a line of bikes coming down 7th Street, maybe 20 of them, their chrome gleaming even in the overcast November light. Daniel's first instinct was to grab his backpack and run. Bikers rolling through in formation like that usually meant trouble for people like him. He'd learned to make himself scarce when certain groups came through his area. But these bikes didn't pass by. They slowed down, then stopped, parking in a line along the curb directly in front of the bus station. Daniel's heart hammered in his chest. He started to stand, ready to bolt, when one of the riders dismounted and removed his helmet. It was a huge man, easily 6'4", with broad shoulders, a thick black beard, and arms covered in tattoos. He wore a leather vest with patches that read, Iron Brotherhood MC, along with other insignia Daniel didn't understand. The man's vest had President written across the back. The other riders were dismounting now, men and women of various ages, all wearing similar vests. They looked intimidating, powerful, like people you didn't mess with. The president walked directly toward Daniel, his boots heavy on the pavement. Daniel's muscles tensed, ready to run, but something made him stay. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the fact that he had nowhere left to run to. The man stopped about 10 feet away and looked at Daniel with intense dark eyes. "You, Daniel Martinez?" the man asked, his voice deep and commanding. Daniel's mouth went dry. How did this man know his name? What did he want? "Yes, sir," Daniel managed to say. "I'm Daniel." The man studied him for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, to Daniel's complete shock, the man's stern expression softened into something that might have been a smile. "My name is Raymond Sullivan," the man said. "My father is Frank Sullivan. I believe you helped him earlier this week." Daniel's eyes went wide. Frank, the old man in the wheelchair. This massive, intimidating biker was his son. "Is he okay?" Daniel asked immediately. Did something happen to him? Raymond's expression shifted to something warmer. "He's fine. Better than fine, actually. But he told me about you. About how you helped him across that intersection, how you got him to his bus stop, how you refused payment at first." Raymond took a step closer. "Daniel, my father called me after he got home that day. He told me about you, about your situation, and he asked me to find you." Daniel's heart was pounding. Why would he do that? "Because my father's a stubborn old man who can't stand to see someone in need," Raymond said, and there was affection in his voice. "And because what you did for him mattered." One of the other riders, a woman with short red hair and kind eyes, stepped forward. She was carrying several large bags. "We brought you some things," she said gently. "Food, clothes, toiletries, and necessities. We thought you could use them." Daniel stared at the bags, overwhelmed. "I don't understand. Why would you do this for me?" "Because you helped our father when you had every reason not to," Raymond said. "You're homeless, hungry, probably scared, and you still stopped to help an old man. That says everything about who you are." Another rider, a younger guy with a friendly face and a sleeve of tattoos, held up a smartphone. "This is for you. It's prepaid with 6 months of service already loaded. All our numbers are programmed in. If you need anything, and I mean anything, you call." Daniel felt like he was in a dream. This couldn't be real. People didn't do things like this. Not for kids like him. "I can't accept all this," Daniel said, though his voice lacked conviction. "I just helped him across a street. And that was more than most people would do," Raymond said. "Look, Daniel, in our world, in the MC world, family is everything. You helped our father, which makes you someone we owe. We pay our debts." The riders started unpacking the bags. There was so much stuff. Canned goods, bottled water, energy bars, and fresh fruit. T-shirts, jeans, socks, underwear, all new, all in approximately Daniel's size. Toiletries, soap, shampoo, toothbrush, toothpaste, deodorant. A thick winter coat that looked expensive. a sturdy backpack to carry it all in, a sleeping bag rated for cold weather. This is just immediate help, Raymond continued. But Daniel, I want to offer you something more. A job. Daniel's head snapped up. A job? I own an auto shop on the south side. Sullivan's Auto Repair. We do everything from oil changes to engine rebuilds. I need someone to help with basic stuff, cleaning, organizing, running parts, and assisting the mechanics. It's not glamorous work, but it's honest pay. $15 an hour to start. If you prove yourself, that goes up. $15 an hour. Daniel did the math in his head. Even part-time, even just 20 hours a week, that would be $300. More money than he'd seen in a year. Why? Daniel asked, his voice breaking. Why would you do this for me? Raymond crouched down so he was at eye level with Daniel. My father was in a bad accident 10 years ago. A drunk driver ran a red light and T-boned his car. Dad survived, but he lost the use of his legs. It's been hard for him, learning to navigate the world from a wheelchair. People ignore him, push past him, treat him like he's invisible. But you didn't. You saw someone who needed help, and you helped. That matters to me, Daniel. That matters to all of us. He gestured to the riders behind him. The Iron Brotherhood isn't just about motorcycles. We're about family, loyalty, and taking care of our own. And right now, we're deciding you're one of ours. One of the older riders, a man with gray hair and a weathered face, stepped forward. Son, I was homeless for 3 years. I know what you're going through. These people, this club, they saved my life. Now we want to help save yours. Daniel felt tears streaming down his face. He didn't try to hide them. After a year of being invisible, of being nothing, here were all these people treating him like he mattered, like he was worth something. I don't know what to say, Daniel whispered. Say you'll come work at my shop, Raymond said. Say you'll let us help you get off these streets. Daniel looked at Raymond, at the assembled riders, at all the supplies they brought. He thought about Frank, about how one simple act of kindness had led to this moment. Yes, Daniel said, his voice stronger now. Yes, I'll work for you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Raymond smiled and extended his hand. Daniel shook it, feeling the strength in Raymond's grip. You start Monday morning. 8 a.m. shops at 2847 South Broadway. Don't be late. I'll be there early, Daniel promised. The woman with red hair smiled warmly. I'm Catherine, by the way, Raymond's wife. That phone has my number. If you need anything over the weekend, you can call me. Understand? Yes, ma'am. Thank you. The riders started mounting their bikes again, their mission apparently complete. But before Raymond put his helmet back on, he turned to Daniel one more time. One more thing, Daniel. You're under the protection of the Iron Brotherhood now. If anyone gives you trouble, if anyone tries to hurt you or move you from your spot here, you tell them who you're connected with. And if they don't listen, you call us. We take care of our own. The motorcycles roared to life one by one, filling the air with their powerful sound. Raymond gave Daniel a final nod, then led the formation back onto the street. Daniel watched them disappear into traffic, then looked at the pile of supplies they'd left. His hands were shaking as he started organizing everything. He had food. Real food. He had clean clothes. He had toiletries. He had a warm coat and a good sleeping bag. He had a phone. And most incredibly, impossibly, he had a job. Daniel sat down on his bench and let himself cry. Really cried for the first time since his mother died. But these weren't tears of grief or despair. These were tears of hope, of gratitude, of the overwhelming feeling of being seen and valued after so long being invisible. That weekend, Daniel prepared for his new job. He used the bus station bathroom to clean himself up as best he could, washing with the new soap, brushing his teeth with the new toothbrush, and putting on the new clothes. He studied the address Raymond had given him, planning his route, figuring out how long it would take to walk there. On Sunday afternoon, Daniel's new phone rang. He fumbled with it, not used to having a phone, and finally answered. Hello. Daniel, it's Catherine, Raymond's wife. How are you doing? I'm good, ma'am. Thank you for everything. Listen, Raymond wanted me to check on you before tomorrow. Do you know how to get to the shop? Yes, ma'am. I'll walk. It should take about an hour. An hour? In this cold? No. Give me your location. I'm coming to pick you up. You don't have to do that, Daniel protested. I know I don't have to. I want to. Besides, we need to stop at a few places first. Catherine picked Daniel up in a pickup truck with the Iron Brotherhood logo on the side. She drove him to a thrift store where they bought him work boots and additional practical clothing. Then she drove him to a barber shop where she insisted on paying for a haircut. Daniel barely recognized himself in the mirror afterward. He looked clean, presentable, like a regular person instead of a homeless kid. Better, Catherine said with satisfaction. Now you look ready to work. She drove him to the shop, pointing out the bus routes he could use in the future. We'll help you get a bus pass, Catherine said. Make your commute easier. When they arrived at Sullivan's Auto Repair, Catherine gave him a tour. The shop was impressive, a large building with 6 work bays, all equipped with lifts and professional tools. There was a clean waiting area for customers, a parts room stocked floor to ceiling, and a small office where Raymond apparently did paperwork. Raymond built this from nothing, Catherine explained. He started as a mechanic, saved every penny, and eventually bought this place 15 years ago. Now he employs 12 people. Good people who needed a chance, just like you. She showed Daniel where he'd be working, explaining his basic duties. Then she handed him an envelope. What's this? Daniel asked. Advance on your first paycheck. $300. Use it to get yourself a cheap room somewhere. There's a boarding house 2 blocks from here that rents by the week. It's not fancy, but it's clean and safe. Daniel stared at the envelope, hardly believing it. I can't keep taking from you. You've already given me so much. Daniel, you're going to earn this. You're going to work hard and prove yourself. This is an investment in you, not charity. Can you understand that? Daniel nodded, clutching the envelope. Yes, ma'am. I won't let you down. Monday morning, Daniel arrived at the shop at 7:30, 30 minutes early. Raymond was already there, opening up. When he saw Daniel, he smiled. Punctual. Good sign. The first day was intense, but good. Raymond introduced Daniel to the mechanics, a diverse crew of men and women who all greeted him warmly. The head mechanic, a man named James, who was perhaps 50, with grease-stained hands and a kind smile, took Daniel under his wing. Ever worked on cars before? James asked. No, sir, but I'm willing to learn. That's all I need to hear. I can teach skills. Can't teach work ethic. You got a work ethic? Yes, sir. Then we'll get along fine. Daniel spent that first day doing simple tasks and sweeping the shop floors, organizing tools, cleaning parts, and running to the parts store when needed. It was physical work, and by the end of the day, Daniel was exhausted. But it was good exhaustion, the kind that came from honest work instead of just trying to survive. Raymond paid him in cash at the end of the day. $60 for 8 hours of work. Daniel stared at the bills in his hand. He'd made more in one day than he usually made in a week of panhandling. You did well today, Raymond said. James says you listen well and follow instructions. Keep that up. Thank you, sir. For everything. Call me Raymond. Sir makes me feel old. That evening, Daniel used Catherine's directions to find the boarding house she'd mentioned. It was a modest building, old but maintained, in a working-class neighborhood. The landlord, an elderly woman named Mrs. Chun, looked at Daniel skeptically when he asked about a room. You have a job? She asked in accented English. Yes, ma'am. I work at Sullivan's Auto Repair. Her expression changed immediately. You work for Raymond Sullivan? Yes, ma'am. Raymond is a good man. He sent you. His wife, Catherine, did. Mrs. Chun nodded approvingly. Okay, I have room. $70 a week. Includes utilities, shared bathroom. You keep the room clean, no drugs, no trouble. Yes, ma'am. I promise. She showed him to a small room on the 2nd floor. It was tiny, barely big enough for a single bed, a small dresser, and a desk. But it had a window that let in light, a door that locked, and it was his. His own space for the first time in a year. Daniel paid for 2 weeks up front, then sat on the bed and looked around his room. He had a job. He had a place to live. He had people who cared about him. After a year of having nothing, he suddenly had everything that mattered. The weeks that followed settled into a routine. Daniel worked Monday through Friday, 8 hours a day. He learned quickly, absorbing information about cars, tools, and repair procedures. James was a patient teacher, showing him how to change oil, rotate tires, replace brake pads, and diagnose common problems. But more than the technical skills, Daniel found something he hadn't expected: community. The shop was always busy with Iron Brotherhood members who brought their bikes in for maintenance or upgrades. They all knew who Daniel was, the kid who'd helped Frank, and they treated him with respect. They joked with him, included him in conversations, and taught him about motorcycle culture and the Brotherhood. Frank himself visited regularly. His wheelchair had been repaired, and he could navigate much better now. He'd sit in the waiting area and talk with Daniel during breaks, telling stories about his life, asking about Daniel's day, and offering advice on everything from work to life in general. "You remind me of Raymond when he was your age," Frank said one afternoon. "Same determination, same good heart." "Raymond's been amazing to me," Daniel said. "I still can't believe he gave me this chance." "That's who my son is," Frank said with pride. "He's built something good here. Not just a business, but a family." Daniel was saving money for the first time in his life. After paying for his room and buying food, he still had money left over. Raymond had raised his pay to $18 an hour after the first month, acknowledging his hard work and quick learning. By Christmas, Daniel had saved over $1,000. He celebrated his 17th birthday in January, and the shop crew threw him a surprise party. There was cake, presents, and more people who cared about him than Daniel had ever imagined possible. Raymond gave him a raise to $22 an hour, and James presented him with a basic set of mechanic tools. "Every real mechanic needs their own tools," James said. "These are yours. Take care of them." Daniel ran his hands over the shiny wrenches, the socket sets, the screwdrivers. His own tools, his own trade. His own future is taking shape. But stability, Daniel was learning, could be fragile. It was a cold February morning when everything shifted. Daniel had just arrived at the shop when he noticed something was wrong. Raymond's truck was parked outside, but the shop wasn't open yet. Through the windows, Daniel could see Raymond pacing back and forth, talking intensely on his phone. When Raymond saw Daniel, he hung up and came outside. His expression was grim. "We need to talk," Raymond said. Daniel's stomach dropped. Had he done something wrong? Was he losing his job? "What's wrong?" Daniel asked, his voice tight with anxiety. "It's not about you," Raymond said quickly, seeing Daniel's expression. "You've been doing great. This is about something else." He gestured for Daniel to follow him inside. In the office, Catherine was there along with several other Iron Brotherhood members Daniel recognized. Everyone looked serious. "Sit down, Daniel," Raymond said. Daniel sat, his heart pounding. Raymond took a deep breath. "There's been an incident. Last night, there was a shooting at a convenience store on Colfax. A clerk was killed. The police are looking at surveillance footage, and they think they've identified the shooter." Daniel didn't understand what this had to do with him. Then Raymond continued. "The problem is, the police think the shooter might be connected to the Iron Brotherhood. They're suggesting we were involved, that this was some kind of gang activity. But that's not true," Daniel said immediately. "You guys aren't a gang. You're a motorcycle club. You help people." "We know that," Catherine said. "But the perception is different. The media is already running stories about motorcycle gangs and violence. They're painting us as criminals." Raymond's jaw was tight. "We're a legitimate club. We've never been involved in anything illegal. We run charity drives. We mentor at-risk youth. We do community service. But none of that matters right now. The story's everywhere, and it's destroying our reputation." One of the other members, a woman named Lisa who worked as a nurse, spoke up. "The hospital called me this morning. They're reviewing my employment because of my club affiliation. Parents are calling the youth center, saying they don't want their kids around us. Everything we've built is being destroyed by lies." Daniel felt anger rising in his chest. These people had saved him. They'd given him a chance when no one else would. They were good people being smeared by false accusations. "What can we do?" Daniel asked. "How can we fight this?" Raymond looked at him. "Actually, we think you might be able to help." "Me? How?" "You're our best story, Daniel," Catherine explained. "You're the kid we helped. You're proof that everything they're saying about us is wrong. If people could hear your story, if they could see what the Iron Brotherhood really stands for." "We want to organize a community forum," Raymond said. "Invite everyone we've ever helped, everyone who knows the truth about us. Let them speak. Let them tell the real story. And Daniel, we'd like you to speak too. The thought terrified him. Standing in front of hundreds of people, telling them about being homeless, about his struggles, about his transformation. Do you think Daniel should speak up to defend the people who helped him? Would you have the courage to do the same? Let us know in the comments. But these people had saved him. How could he refuse? Okay, Daniel said, his voice steadier than he felt. I'll do it. The community forum was organized for the following Saturday at a local high school auditorium. The Iron Brotherhood reached out to everyone they'd ever helped, every organization they partnered with, every family whose lives they'd touched. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The auditorium, which seated about 400 people, was packed beyond capacity, with people standing along the walls and in the aisles. Daniel stood backstage, his hands shaking, his stomach in knots. He'd written and rewritten his speech a dozen times, but the words still felt inadequate. Catherine found him there, anxiety written all over his face. Nervous? She asked. Terrified. That's good. It means this matters to you. She squeezed his shoulder. Daniel, all you have to do is tell the truth. Tell them who you were, who you are now, and who helped you become that person. The truth is powerful. Raymond appeared beside them. It's time. You ready? Daniel took a deep breath and nodded. As ready as I'll ever be. The forum began with Raymond giving opening remarks, explaining why they'd called the meeting and addressing the accusations directly. He spoke with calm authority, laying out facts, presenting the club's charitable work, and challenging the false narrative being spread about them. Then, one by one, people came forward to testify. A veteran talked about how the Iron Brotherhood had helped him when he was struggling with PTSD and homelessness, giving him work and purpose. A single father described how club members had repaired his car for free when he couldn't afford to and needed it to get to his job. The director of a youth boxing gym explained how the Iron Brotherhood had sponsored his program, providing equipment and mentorship for troubled kids. A domestic violence survivor, her voice shaking but determined, told how Iron Brotherhood members had escorted her to retrieve her belongings from an abusive partner, keeping her safe when she felt most vulnerable. The director of a local food bank spoke about the club's consistent donations and volunteer work. Story after story, a pattern of community service and genuine compassion. By the time Daniel was called to speak, the mood in the auditorium had shifted. People who had come skeptical were now listening intently, questioning the narrative they'd been fed by the media. Daniel walked to the microphone on legs that felt like rubber. He looked out at the sea of faces, hundreds of people all watching him, waiting to hear his story. He saw Raymond and Catherine in the front row, Frank in his wheelchair beside them, James and the shop crew, Lisa and the other club members. He saw faces he didn't recognize, but who had come to support the club. And in the back, he saw several reporters with cameras and notebooks. My name is Daniel Martinez, he began, his voice amplified by the microphone. I'm 17 years old, and just over a year ago, I was homeless. I was living in a bus station, eating from trash cans, and certain that nobody in the world cared if I lived or died. The auditorium went completely silent. Daniel continued, telling his story from the beginning. His father's death, his mother's illness and eventual death, the failure of the foster system, the year he spent on the streets, invisible to everyone around him. Then he told them about Frank, about seeing him struggling with his wheelchair at a dangerous intersection, about choosing to help even though he had nothing to gain from it. I helped him because it was the right thing to do, Daniel said. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know his son was the president of the Iron Brotherhood. I just saw someone who needed help, and I helped. That's all. He paused, looking directly at the crowd. But what happened next changed my life completely. Raymond Sullivan and the Iron Brotherhood found me. They brought me supplies, gave me a phone, and offered me a job. They helped me get off the streets, taught me a trade, and gave me a future. They didn't have to do any of that. I was nobody, just another homeless kid that society had thrown away. But they saw me as a person worth investing in. Daniel's voice grew stronger as he continued. The articles that have been written about the Iron Brotherhood call them a gang, call them criminals, suggest they're violent and dangerous. But let me tell you what they really are. They're people who show up when others need help. They're the ones who run food banks and mentor troubled kids and escort abuse survivors to safety. They're the ones who gave a homeless teenager a second chance at life. He looked directly at the reporters in the back. I'm standing here today because of the Iron Brotherhood. I have a job because of them. I have a home because of them. I have a future because of them. And I'm not the only one. He gestured to the people who had spoken earlier. Every person who testified tonight has a story about how this club helped them. That's not what gangs do. That's what families do. That's what good people do. Daniel's voice cracked with emotion. So yes, I'm biased. I owe these people everything. But my bias doesn't change the facts. The facts are that the Iron Brotherhood has done more good in this community than most organizations will ever do. They did it without asking for recognition or praise. They did it because it's who they are. And the accusations being made against them? They're lies. Complete lies designed to destroy good people. The auditorium erupted in applause. People stood, clapping, some crying. Daniel saw Frank wiping tears from his eyes, Raymond standing with his arm around Catherine, the entire Iron Brotherhood membership on their feet, applauding. The applause continued for what felt like forever. When it finally died down, Raymond came to the stage and pulled Daniel into a tight hug. You did it, kid, Raymond whispered. You really did it. The impact of the forum was immediate and powerful. Local news outlets that had run the initial story now covered the community response extensively. Videos of Daniel's speech went viral on social media, racking up millions of views. The shooter was arrested 2 days later, and police confirmed he had absolutely no connection to the Iron Brotherhood. It had been a case of mistaken identity and rushed judgment, amplified by media sensationalism. The convenience store shooting had been perpetrated by a lone individual with no gang affiliations whatsoever. The major newspapers and TV stations issued corrections and apologies. The narrative completely flipped. Instead of being seen as a dangerous gang, the Iron Brotherhood was now being recognized for its community service work. Organizations that had distanced themselves reached back out. The youth center apologized and asked the club to continue its mentorship program. The hospital reinstated Lisa with a formal apology. And Daniel, who had only wanted to help the people who'd helped him, found himself somewhat famous. People recognized him at the shop, stopped him on the street to thank him for speaking up, and told him his story had inspired them. It was overwhelming and uncomfortable. Daniel didn't want fame. He just wanted to work on cars and belong to his found family. But Raymond helped him understand the opportunity. You've got a platform now, Raymond explained one evening at the shop. People are listening to you. We can use that to help others, to shine a light on homelessness, on foster care failures, on all the issues you've experienced. Your story can make a real difference. So Daniel started speaking at schools and community centers, sharing his experience, advocating for homeless youth, and encouraging people to see past appearances to the humanity beneath. He talked about the realities of street life, the failures of systems meant to help, and the power of compassion. It wasn't easy. Public speaking still terrified him. But it felt important, meaningful, like he could help prevent other kids from going through what he'd endured. Summer arrived, bringing with it Daniel's first anniversary of helping Frank. The Iron Brotherhood organized a celebration, not just of that anniversary, but of everything that had grown from it. They called it Ripples of Kindness and made it part fundraiser, part community festival. They invited everyone whose lives had been touched by the club's work. They raised money for homeless services, foster care programs, and youth advocacy. Daniel spoke again, but this time his message was different. He wasn't just telling his story. He was challenging others to create their own ripples of kindness. You don't have to be rich to make a difference, Daniel told the crowd. You don't have to have power or status or resources. You just have to see people, really see them. See the homeless person not as a problem, but as a human being. See the struggling single parent not as lazy, but as overwhelmed. See the troubled kid not as bad, but as hurting. He paused, scanning the faces watching him. And then do something, even something small. Help someone cross a street. Buy a meal for someone hungry. Offer a kind word to someone alone. Give someone a chance when everyone else has written them off. You never know what ripples your kindness might create. You never know whose life you might change. The crowd was silent, absorbing his words. Then an older man stood up in the back. My son was living on the streets 2 years ago, the man said, his voice carrying clearly. I tried to help him, but he'd given up on himself. Then someone from the Iron Brotherhood found him and gave him a job. Daniel, you probably don't remember, but you spoke at a youth center last year. My son heard you. Your story inspired him to accept help, to believe he could have a future. He's 9 months sober now. He's working. He's rebuilding his life. You did that. Another person stood. I used to judge homeless people. I used to think they deserved their situation, that they were lazy or addicts. Then I heard Daniel speak. I started volunteering at a shelter. I've met so many people with stories like his, people who just needed a chance. My entire perspective changed because of this young man. One by one, people stood sharing how Daniel's story, how the Iron Brotherhood's work, how this culture of kindness had impacted them. Teachers who were now more patient with struggling students. Employers who were hiring people with difficult backgrounds. Regular people who were paying more attention, helping more, judging less. The ripples were spreading far beyond what Daniel had imagined. As the event wound down and people began to leave, a man Daniel didn't recognize approached him. He was maybe in his mid-30s, well-dressed, carrying himself with confidence. Daniel Martinez? The man asked, extending his hand. I'm Thomas Chun, director of the Colorado Youth Advocacy Foundation. I've been following your story. The work you've been doing, speaking about homeless youth and foster care reform, it's powerful. I'd like to talk to you about partnering with our foundation. Daniel shook his hand, curious. What kind of partnership? We're launching a new initiative focused on preventing youth homelessness. Early intervention, better foster care support, job training programs, all of it. We need someone who's lived it to help us design programs that actually work. Someone who can speak authentically to these kids and help us understand what they need. Thomas pulled out a business card. This would be paid work, consulting, and speaking. We're talking about creating something that could help thousands of kids across Colorado. Would you be interested in discussing it? Daniel looked at the card, then at Thomas. Yes, he said. Absolutely yes. Over the following weeks, Daniel met with Thomas and the foundation team. They were serious about creating comprehensive programs to help at-risk youth. They wanted Daniel's input on everything from shelter design to job training curricula to mentorship programs. They offered him a position as youth advocate consultant, paying him $30 an hour for his time and expertise. Daniel was stunned. They were paying him to share his experience, to help design programs, to make sure no other kid fell through the cracks the way he had. He kept his job at Raymond's shop, working 4 days a week, and spent 1 day a week with the foundation. Raymond was supportive, proud even. You're growing, Daniel, Raymond said. This is what we hoped for. You're taking what we gave you and using it to help others. That's exactly right. But Daniel never forgot his roots. He still visited Frank regularly, sitting with the old man and talking about life. Frank had become the grandfather Daniel had never had, offering wisdom and perspective. You're doing good work, son, Frank said one afternoon. Better than you probably realize. I'm just trying to pay it forward, Daniel said. Like you and Raymond did for me. Frank smiled. That's how it works. We help each other. We lift each other. That's what builds a real community. Daniel turned 18 in July. The Iron Brotherhood threw him a party at the shop, complete with cake, presents, and more people who cared about him than he'd ever imagined. Raymond presented him with something special, a leather vest with an Iron Brotherhood patch. You're not a full member yet, Raymond explained. That's a process that takes time. But this vest marks you as under our protection, as part of our family. If you ever want to prospect for full membership when you're older, that path is open. But there's no pressure. Daniel held the vest, feeling its weight, the significance of it. Thank you, he managed, his voice thick. For everything. For seeing me when no one else did. You made yourself easy to see, kid, Raymond said, pulling him into a hug. You were always worth it. We just gave you a chance to prove it. The months continued to pass. Daniel's work with the foundation expanded. They launched pilot programs in 3 cities, providing comprehensive support for homeless youth. Housing assistance, job training, educational support, mental health services, everything Daniel wished had existed when he was 16. He spoke at the program launches, telling his story, explaining what these services meant to kids who had nothing. He met with legislators, advocating for policy changes. He consulted with social workers, helping them understand the perspective of the youth they were trying to help. And slowly, things began to change. More resources were allocated. More programs were created. More kids were being helped before they ended up on the streets. Daniel also completed his GED, studying at night and passing with high scores. He enrolled in community college, taking business classes. He was thinking long-term now, thinking about his future in ways he never had before. One cold November morning, almost 2 years after helping Frank, Daniel was at the shop when a teenage girl walked in. She looked about 15, thin, with clothes that were worn and dirty. Her eyes held that particular weariness Daniel recognized immediately. She was homeless, or close to it. "Can I help you?" Daniel asked gently, setting down his tools. The girl looked around nervously. "I heard that this place sometimes hires people. I need work. I can do anything, cleaning, whatever. I'm a hard worker." Daniel's heart squeezed. He saw himself in her. "What's your name?" "Maya." "I'm Daniel." "Maya, how old are you?" 15. "I know that's young, but I really need work." "Where are your parents?" Maya's expression closed off. "Don't have any. I aged out of foster care early. It's complicated." Daniel glanced at Raymond, who was working nearby but clearly listening. Raymond nodded, understanding what needed to happen. "Maya, we can't officially hire you until you're 16, Daniel explained. "Labor laws. But I have a better idea. Let me make some phone calls." He called Thomas at the foundation. Within an hour, they had Maya connected with emergency services. Within a day, she had a safe place to stay. And Daniel made her a promise. When she turned 16 in 4 months, there would be a job waiting for her at Sullivan's Auto Repair if she wanted it. "Why are you helping me?" Maya asked, confused by how quickly things were happening. "You don't even know me." Daniel smiled. "Someone helped me once when they didn't know me either. I'm just paying it forward." True to his word, when Maya turned 16, Daniel helped Raymond hire her. She started the same way he had, doing basic tasks, learning the trade. James took her under his wing, just as he'd done with Daniel. The cycle continued. Over the next year, Daniel and the Iron Brotherhood helped dozens of young people. Some are homeless, some are aging out of foster care, and some are just lost and looking for direction. They created a systematic approach: identification, connection to services, employment, mentorship, and long-term support. Not everyone succeeded. Some kids weren't ready for help, or couldn't handle the structure, or had issues too deep for what they could provide. But many did succeed, and each success validated everything they were building. On Daniel's 19th birthday, Raymond called him into the office. Daniel expected maybe a bonus or a card. What he got was completely different. "Sit down, Daniel," Raymond said seriously. Daniel sat, confused and a little nervous. "Daniel, you've been with us for almost 3 years now. You've grown from a scared kid into a man I'm incredibly proud of. You've become a skilled mechanic, a mentor to others, and an advocate for homeless youth. You've made a real difference in this community." Raymond slid a folder across the desk. Daniel opened it, finding legal documents, incorporation papers, and financial statements. "What is this?" "That's the paperwork for a new organization," Raymond explained. "A nonprofit specifically focused on helping homeless youth. Everything you've been doing with the foundation, but independent and focused specifically on our community here in Denver." Daniel stared at the papers, not comprehending. "Catherine and I want to fund it," Raymond continued. "We're putting up $50,000 as seed money, but we don't want to run it. You should run it." "Me?" "Raymond, I'm 19. I don't know anything about running a nonprofit. You'll learn. We'll connect you with lawyers, accountants, and people who run successful nonprofits. They'll help you set it up. And you won't be alone. The Iron Brotherhood will support you. I'll support you." Raymond leaned forward. "Daniel, this is your chance to create the thing you needed when you were 16. The bridge between homelessness and stability. The support system that catches kids before they fall through the cracks. You know what works because you lived it. You know how to connect with these kids because you were one of them. Daniel's hands trembled as he looked through the papers. A real organization, real funding, real infrastructure to help kids like Maya, like he had been, like thousands of others who were invisible. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Daniel looked up at Raymond, this man who had seen potential in a homeless teenager, who had given him chance after chance, who had become the father Daniel never had. Yes, Daniel said, his voice breaking. God, yes. Thank you. They shook hands. Then Raymond pulled him into a hug. You're going to do great things, kid. I believe in you. The Daniel Martinez Youth Foundation launched 6 months later. Daniel worked with lawyers to get the nonprofit status established, with accountants to set up proper financial systems, and with experienced nonprofit directors to learn the ropes. He brought on Maya, now 17 and thriving, as his first employee. They hired social workers, job counselors, and mentors. They partnered with existing homeless services, filling gaps rather than duplicating efforts. The foundation offered comprehensive support, immediate needs assistance like food and hygiene products, emergency housing placement, job training and employment, educational support, mental health services, and long-term mentorship. It was everything Daniel had needed at 16, everything that hadn't existed for him then. The first year was incredibly challenging. Daniel worked 18-hour days, learning on the job, making mistakes, correcting course, pushing forward. There were times he felt overwhelmed, times he doubted himself, times he wanted to quit. But Raymond was always there with guidance. Catherine with encouragement. Frank with wisdom. The Iron Brotherhood with muscle when they needed to move equipment or set up events. Maya with her energy and ideas. And the kids. Every young person who came through their doors reminded Daniel why he was doing this. A 16-year-old girl who got her first apartment. A 17-year-old boy who went back to school. A 15-year-old who reconnected with family through their help. Each story was a validation that this work mattered. By the end of the second year, the foundation had helped over 300 young people. By year 3, they'd expanded to a second location. By year 4, they were operating across the Denver metro area with a staff of 18. Daniel's story continued to spread. He spoke at national conferences, advised other cities on homeless youth programs, and consulted with state legislators on policy reform. But he never forgot where he came from. He still visited the bus station sometimes, standing where his bench had been, remembering the hunger and fear and hopelessness. He remembered so he would never take for granted what he'd built, so he would never forget the kids still living that life. On a sunny October afternoon, 5 years after helping Frank cross that intersection, Daniel stood at a podium in front of several hundred people. The Denver City Council was dedicating a new facility, a comprehensive youth services center that would provide everything from emergency shelter to job training to mental health services. They were calling it the Frank Sullivan Youth Center, honoring the man whose encounter with a homeless teenager had sparked a movement. Frank sat in his wheelchair in the front row, Raymond and Catherine beside him, beaming with pride. The entire Iron Brotherhood membership was there, dozens of patched members who had helped build this. Maya was there, now 20 and running one of the foundation's satellite offices. James and the shop crew. Thomas and the foundation team. Hundreds of others. Young people they'd helped, volunteers, donors, community members who had caught the vision. Daniel cleared his throat and began. 5 years ago, I was homeless. 16 years old, living in a bus station, eating from trash cans, absolutely convinced I was worthless and that nobody cared if I lived or died. He paused, looking out at the crowd. Then one Tuesday morning, I saw an old man in a wheelchair struggling to cross a dangerous intersection. He was heading into traffic, and I knew if I didn't do something, he was going to get hurt. So I helped him. I didn't think about it. I just did it. Daniel gestured to Frank. That man was Frank Sullivan. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know his son was the president of the Iron Brotherhood. I just knew he needed help, and helping him felt good. For the first time in months, I felt like maybe I mattered. His voice grew stronger. What I didn't know was that Frank and his son Raymond would change my life completely. Raymond found me, gave me a job, helped me get off the streets, taught me a trade, and gave me a family. One act of kindness led to another, which led to another, which led to thousands more. He gestured to the building behind him. This center exists because 5 years ago, a homeless boy helped an old man in a wheelchair. This center exists because the Iron Brotherhood decided that kindness mattered more than reputation. This center exists because hundreds of people saw what was possible and decided to make it real. Daniel looked directly at the crowd. But most importantly, this center exists so no kid in Denver has to sleep in a bus station. So no teenager has to believe they're worthless. So every young person has somewhere to turn, someone to see them, someone to help them find their way. His voice cracked with emotion. I know what it's like to be invisible. I know what it's like to believe you have no future. And I know what it's like when someone finally sees you and tells you that you matter. He paused. So today, as we dedicate this center, I want to make a promise to every young person who's struggling right now. We see you. You matter. You're not worthless. And when you're ready for help, we'll be here. He turned to Frank. Frank, you saved my life by letting me help you. Everything that's happened since started with you seeing value in a homeless kid. This center carries your name because you embody what it stands for: dignity, compassion, and believing that every person has worth. Frank was crying, and so was most of the audience. The applause was thunderous, people standing, cheering, celebrating not just the building but what it represented. When the noise finally died down, Frank asked if he could speak. Raymond helped him to the microphone. I'm not much for public speaking, Frank said, his gravelly voice amplified. But I need to say something. That day, Daniel helped me. I was having a bad morning. My wheelchair was broken. I was frustrated and angry. I didn't want help from anyone, especially not from some kid on the street. But Daniel helped me anyway. He was patient and respectful and kind. And when I tried to pay him, he refused. That told me everything about his character. Frank turned toward Daniel. Son, you saved yourself. You had the strength and the character all along. I just had the privilege of recognizing it. Watching you grow into the man you are today, seeing all the lives you've touched, it's been the greatest honor of my old life. I'm proud of you, Daniel. So damn proud. Daniel stepped forward and hugged Frank, both of them crying, the audience giving them space to have this moment. The dedication ceremony continued with more speeches, tours of the facility, and a reception. But for Daniel, the most meaningful moment came later. A teenage boy approached him, maybe 15, with that same weary look Daniel remembered from his own reflection years ago. Are you Daniel Martinez? The boy asked quietly. I am. What's your name? Jordan. I'm staying with a friend, but it's not working out. Someone told me about this place, about your foundation. Could someone like me get help here? Daniel felt his heart expand. This was exactly why they'd built this. Yes, Daniel said firmly. Absolutely. This place was built for people exactly like you. Are you safe tonight? I think so, but I don't know about tomorrow. Okay, let me introduce you to someone. Daniel waved over one of the foundation's case managers. This is Sarah. She's going to make sure you're safe, that you have a place to stay, that you get everything you need. Jordan, you're going to be okay. I promise. Jordan looked skeptical, the way Daniel would have been years ago. How do you know? Because I was you. 5 years ago, I was exactly where you are. And someone helped me. Now I get to help you. That's how this works. He watched as Sarah led Jordan inside to begin his intake process, beginning his journey from homelessness to stability. The circle was completing itself again. As the sun set that evening, Daniel stood in the parking lot of the Frank Sullivan Youth Center, watching the last people leave. Raymond came up beside him. You did it, kid, Raymond said. You took what we gave you and built something incredible. I couldn't have done it without you. Without the Brotherhood. Without Frank. Without all of it. Maybe, Raymond said. But you're the one who showed up every day and did the work. You turned your pain into purpose. That's all you. They stood in comfortable silence. Then Raymond spoke again. You know what I think about sometimes? What would have happened if you'd walked past my father that day? If you'd decided it wasn't your problem? Daniel shook his head. I don't think it was about the universe or fate. I think it was about choice. Frank chose to go out that day, even though it was hard. I chose to help even though I was scared. You chose to find me and help me even though you didn't have to. Hundreds of people chose to support this work. The rest was people choosing kindness. Raymond smiled. When did you get so wise? I had good teachers. They embraced. This bond forged through chance and choice, strengthened through years of loyalty. Raymond climbed on his bike and rode off into the sunset. Daniel pulled out his phone and looked at an old photo he'd saved, the only picture of his mother. I did okay, Mom, he whispered. I hope I made you proud. He put the phone away and looked at the building, this center that would help so many kids. Tomorrow, kids like Jordan would walk through those doors looking for help, and they would find it. The ripples would continue spreading. The circle would keep completing itself. Denver would become a little kinder, a little more compassionate, because people chose to help each other. Daniel drove home to the small house he'd bought the previous year. Not fancy, but his, earned through hard work. Inside, Maya was there with dinner already started, a weekly tradition they'd maintained. How did it go, she asked. Perfect. We helped our first kid tonight. 15-year-old, named Jordan. Maya smiled. That's exactly what this was for. They cooked together, talked and laughed, and Daniel felt content. He had work he believed in, people he loved, a purpose that gave his life meaning. He'd come impossibly far from that scared 16-year-old in the bus station. But he never forgot where he'd been, because forgetting would mean forgetting all the kids still out there, still scared, still invisible. And Daniel refused to let anyone be invisible again. That night, Daniel sat down with his journal, a habit Catherine had taught him years ago. He wrote about the dedication, about Jordan, about the overwhelming feeling of having built something that mattered. And he wrote about gratitude. I'm grateful for that Tuesday 5 years ago. I'm grateful I chose to help Frank. I'm grateful Raymond found me. I'm grateful the Iron Brotherhood took a chance on a homeless kid with nothing. I'm grateful to everyone who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I'm grateful I can now be that person for someone else. He paused, then wrote one final line. Tomorrow I get to help more kids like Jordan, and that's the greatest privilege of my life. Daniel closed the journal and turned off the light. As he lay in bed, in his own house, with a job he loved and people who cared about him, he thought about how far he'd come. From invisible to visible. From worthless to valued. From hopeless to hopeful. All because of one choice, one moment of kindness that rippled outward and changed everything. And tomorrow, those ripples would continue. More kids would be helped. More lives would be changed. More kindness would spread. It was a beautiful thought to fall asleep to. So what did you think of Daniel's incredible journey? From a homeless teenager to the founder of an organization helping hundreds of young people, his story proves that one simple act of kindness can transform not just one life, but countless others. If this story moved you, we'd love to hear about it. Have you ever helped someone and had it change your own life? Or has someone's kindness changed your path? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now. And if you believe in the power of compassion and second chances, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another story like Daniel's. These real-life accounts of human kindness remind us what's possible when we choose to see each other, to help each other, to show up for each other. Don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who needs a reminder that their circumstances don't define their future. That one choice, one moment of courage, one act of kindness can create ripples that change the world. Daniel's story started with him helping an old man in a wheelchair cross a dangerous intersection. It grew into a movement that has helped hundreds of young people find their way home. Your story could start today. All it takes is one choice. To see someone who's invisible. To help someone who's struggling. To believe in someone when they've stopped believing in themselves. What will your choice be? Thanks for watching. And remember, kindness is never wasted. It always comes back, it always matters, and it always creates ripples that spread farther than we can imagine. Until next time, stay kind, stay compassionate, and keep making a difference however you can. See you in the next story.